We've been walking for months, climbing the slope of grief, looking out for any sign, a sound, a voice to give instructions, a sense of direction. Where do you find yourself? I find myself in other people's words. A year has passed. Where have you been? I haven't been active lately, neither truly active nor authentically passive. Paralyzed on the couch, sitting on a pile of unadmitted thoughts and emotions, watching the world go by thinking I need to do something. I have spent years in cities that look and feel ever less fit for humans. I walk the streets observing our daily interactions with machines, the electronic spokesman of the man telling us what to do next. Now scan your products. Now enter your password. Now take your receipt. It is becoming clear that I don't belong in this dystopia, but where then? Is it a land or a person? If I go away now, what happens to the unresolved grief? Does it stay with the people and the places, or does it follow me around like the boxes I never opened since I moved? Is grief ever resolved? The next one to unmute shares memories of being violently corrected, being adjusted to fit. You ask, when does corrective treatment lead to transformation? And you know how sometimes a memory hits you so strong that it transports you to another place. I am 10 years old and my mother is driving me across the city for my physiotherapy session. Doctor said my back is not straight and that if I don't go to physio, I will have to wear a steel-boned corset day and night. And as if that's not enough, he says if I gain weight while wearing the steel-boned corset, I might asphyxiate in my sleep. So I am doing the physiotherapy sessions on a daily basis, and once in a while, when it has been a long day or at the end of a tough session, my mom takes me to a grill restaurant that is very conveniently placed right next door of the physiotherapist's office to eat a pita gyros, the world-famous Greek street food. On the walls of that restaurant there are black and white pictures of Izmir and Istanbul, and the red paprika powder that they use on the meat has a strong smoked taste, hints and clues to a story of war and migration that I was too young and miseducated to figure out. We ate a pita gyros each. We didn't tell Dad or he would get mad, nor my brother or he'd be jealous. I am now almost 40 years old. I moved out of Athens for a long time already, but still going to the physiotherapists in every city that I've lived. My spine has stayed straight enough to support me through these years, and whenever I am in Athens for a visit, I drive by my old physio's place, I go to that grill restaurant next door, and I reward myself with 2 pita gyros. One for me for keeping it up, and one for my mom who taught me how to do it. Ύπνε που παίρνεις τα παιδιά, έλα και πάρε τούτο, μικρό μικρό σου τόσα, μεγάλο φέρε μου το. Where do you find yourself? I find myself in my mother's voice singing me to sleep. I find myself in my first memory of a melody. I find myself singing it in her voice. You know how sometimes a memory hits you so strong that it transports you to another place? And what if this place you ended up in is not familiar? Have you ever lost yourself in someone else's story? We've been walking together for months, listening to each other, connecting personal moments of grief to collective mourning rituals, patching onto a web of pain. Then you unmuted and said, parts of my family died in Kurdistan in the uprising of 1923 and it's still going. The Nakba in Palestine 1948, the invasion of Cyprus 1974, and it's still going. My father died in Iraq 2003, my brother in Syria 2011, in Afghanistan 2021, and it's still going. And now there is silence in our calls. We feel comfortable listening to this silence. It is a way to know that we're not alone. Today we walk together again in grief, and one of the pieces we listen to pictures the dead bodies of refugees floating in the Mediterranean Sea. It talks about how their families are contacted, how are the bodies being taken care of, what are the local traditions and rituals, as well as the state and interstate policies that decide on the fate of the bodies of those people. On that same evening, we meet at a listening circle on Zoom. Everyone seems to have been affected by this piece. Everyone makes mention of it, adding from their perspective to this lump that is forming in my throat. Did you hear? Here's a list of countries in Europe that strategically target immigrants through legislation. I'm trying to keep notes without making it too obvious. I don't want them to feel like they're being interviewed, so at first I tried to do it on a piece of paper on my thigh. Did you hear? Here's some photos from fires inside the refugee camps in Greece. Here are the stats of the average journey of an immigrant from North Africa to Europe. Here's how much money they have to pay, what kinds of risks they put themselves into, and what are the chances of survival they have. The pen is not working on my knee, it's punching holes through the paper, so I grab a ring binder folder that's laying on the floor and balance it on my leg. Did you hear? They said Greek border police and Frontex pushed back another 50 people last night. They said they found this letter in the pocket of one of the people who drowned in the Mediterranean. In the letter, he was thanking the sea for accepting him without a visa or a passport. You know how sometimes a memory hits you so strong that it transports you to another place? And what if this place that you ended up in is not familiar? Have you ever lost yourself in someone else's story? How do you connect with someone who's hurt? I'm thinking of all my friends who made it through the journey, who didn't drown and managed to reach safety, and the experiences they described to me of what happens after they make it. The months or years of being moved around the periphery of the country before they can manage to build any meaningful connections, on to the next camp and to the next, until they get assigned a case manager who cannot assess and does not care much about their skills. Take this pocket money and don't you dare work and make more, we will take it away from you. You're only entitled to a certain amount. What do you want to be, an artist? Yeah, maybe in your country. Here you can gain practical skills, work in Horeca, serve us. What do you want, a passport? Maybe in 5 years, maybe in a couple of more years, maybe next year. Pay, take exams, give up everything, prove that you love us. This is too much. With one ear, I'm listening to the people on the Zoom call, but my chest feels like a hot metal plate, and every next person to talk is like the blacksmith hitting it with a hammer until it cracks. What about this system of presumable diversity, inclusion, and integration that renders people as forever strangers? What about the emotional torture and humiliation of these visa papers and border police checks? Then you unmuted and said anger is an invitation. And I thought, what a party to be invited to. My therapist is of the opinion that I'm hypersensitive and that as much as she empathizes with me, she wants to warn me about the times that we're moving into. She quotes her favorite psychoanalyst who predicts that in the near future, hypersensitivity will be seen as a disease and treated with pills. And I quote my favorite composer who once said, "It takes courage to participate in a future world that will one day be laughing at us because we were touched by the dead, music, and the stars." Time is almost up. Everyone in the listening circle has shared a thought except for me. I look down on my page of notes. Everything has been said. Nothing changes. I look at the ring binder folder that I've been using as a slate to write on during this call, This folder is full of songs by that same composer that I mentioned to my therapist, and there is this one song in there that I turn to for relief when the world feels too big, or when a conversation between friends about politics leaves them in despair. Who knows, maybe it can do something for us here on this Zoom call. So I open the folder to the page of that song and mute my microphone and say, now listen to the story of Kemal, a young prince from the east, descendant of Sinbad the sailor who thought he could change the world. But bitter is the will of Allah, and dark the souls of men. Once upon a time in the lands of the east, the plate was empty, the water was stale. In Mosul, in Basra, under the old date palm, in bitterness are crying the children of the desert, and a young man hears their cry and veers towards it. The Bedouins look at him with a sorrowful glance, and he swears in the name of Allah that times will change. When the lords heard of this boy's fearlessness, they set off with a wolf's fang and a lion's fleece. From Tigris to Euphrates and from the earth to the sky, they're hunting down the renegade to catch him alive. The hordes come down on him like rampant dogs, and they take him to the Khalif to tie a noose around his head. Black honey and black milk he drank that morning before he drew on the gallows his final breath. With 2 old camels and a red horse on his side, the Prophet awaits at the gates of heaven. They go now hand in hand, and it's cloudy all around them, but the star of Damascus kept them company. In a month and in a year they see in front of them Allah, who from his high throne says to foolish Sinbad, my defeated wise boy, times do not change. The world moves forward with fire and with knife. Καλή νύχτα, Kemal. How do you connect with one who's in pain? Do you take a step out of your limits for it? How do you connect when you're in pain? We are all climbing this mountain of grief, climbing though we might never see the top, though we might never meet, but climbing in the same direction with our chest, our solar plexus, connected to the sun and to the center of the earth at the same time, climbing until Mother Earth becomes Mother Death, until we belong in not belonging, until looking for a home means home, until we become this mountain, until my sweat joins your tears and carve new rivers down its sides, until this mountain, once a border, now a hug for you and me, dissolves over the years to a flat field, and then we can walk again.